The parlor trick. You've seen the magic trick. The AI that generates a perfect image from a few words. The chatbot that writes a poem or a piece of code. The media has you debating whether it will replace artists, writers, and paralegals. They want you focused on the magician's hands. They don't want you looking at the stage. Because while you are distracted by these digital parlor tricks, the largest and quietest construction project in human history is underway. A continent-spanning infrastructure of silicon and fiber optic cable is being laid down in secret. Data centers the size of small cities are rising in deserts and Arctic circles, devouring the energy of entire nations and siphoning the water from dying rivers. Trillions of dollars, not from venture capital but from sovereign wealth funds and shadow financiers, are being poured into this machine. The scale of the investment doesn't match the story we are being told. You don't spend this kind of capital, this kind of political energy, to build a better search engine. So what is it for? What is the real product being built at this unprecedented scale? The answer is simple. They are not building a tool for you to use. They are building a cage for you to live in. And in this archive, we will show you the blueprints. The sovereign stack, a cloud made of iron and silicon. The first step to understanding any system of control is to reject the language given to you by its architects. In our case, the first word we must discard is the cloud. It is the most successful marketing term of the 21st century, a masterpiece of misdirection. It conjures images of something ethereal, weightless, decentralized, and everywhere at once. It sounds like magic. It is designed to make you feel comfortable with a process you do not understand. The reality is the precise opposite. The cloud has a physical location. It has a weight. It has a voracious appetite. And it is the most centralized power structure ever conceived. AI does not live in the ether. It lives in windowless concrete monoliths, buildings the size of a dozen football fields, strategically placed along the arteries of global fiber optic networks and next to the largest power and water sources. These are the data centers. They are not libraries of information. They are computational factories. Inside, tens of thousands of servers, packed into racks, generate a heat so intense that the cost of cooling them is one of the single greatest operational expenses. A single large data center can consume the same amount of electricity as a city of 50,000 people and guzzle millions of gallons of water a day for its cooling systems, often in the middle of drought-stricken regions like Arizona or Nevada. This is not weightless. This is heavy industry on a scale that dwarfs the steel mills and car plants of the last century. It is an empire of iron, silicon, and copper, fueled by water and electricity. An empire whose physical choke points are more fragile and more critical than the Strait of Hormuz ever was for oil. To grasp the new global power structure, you must understand what we call the sovereign stack. It is a hierarchy, a pyramid of control, where each layer is dependent on the one below it, and a tiny handful of entities own the entire structure. At the absolute base of this pyramid, the foundational layer upon which everything else is built, is the silicon foundry. This is the land itself, the physical ground from which all digital power springs. For all practical purposes, this means one company, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, or TSMC. Nearly all of the advanced chips that power AI, from NVIDIA's processors to the chips in your phone, are physically fabricated in their facilities, most of which are located on a single, earthquake-prone island within 100 miles of a geopolitical adversary. A modern fabrication plant, a fab, is the most complex manufacturing environment on Earth, costing over $20 billion to build. The idea that a competitor could spring up overnight is a fantasy. This gives TSMC, and by extension the political stability of Taiwan, a veto power over the future of the entire human species. Without these foundries, the AI revolution stops dead. The next layer up is the architects, the designers of the chips themselves. Here, one name has achieved an almost mythical status: NVIDIA. For decades, NVIDIA built graphics processing units, or GPUs, for the video game market. Through a combination of brilliant engineering and historical luck, it turned out that the architecture needed to render complex graphics in parallel was perfectly suited for the mathematics of machine learning. They didn't just build the engine for AI, they built an entire ecosystem around it called CUDA, a software layer that locks developers into their hardware. This is their moat. It's why NVIDIA isn't just a hardware company, it's a gatekeeper. They manufacture the shovels in a global gold rush, and they have a monopoly. The demand is so high that their H100 chips sell for $40,000 apiece, and nations are now negotiating for access to them, as if they were strategic military assets. But even if you could acquire 100,000 of these chips, where would you put them? How would you power and cool them? This brings us to the third layer of the stack, the cloud landlords. This is the domain of Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud. These three American giants have spent the last decade building the physical data center empire we just described. They buy NVIDIA's chips by the tens of thousands and rent access to that computational power. Nearly every AI company you have ever heard of, including the famous ones like OpenAI and Anthropic, are fundamentally tenants. They are paying rent to one of these three landlords for the right to run their experiments. They do not own the factory. They are merely allowed to use the equipment. This creates a dependency so profound that it renders the idea of true competition almost meaningless. The landlords can change the terms, raise the rent, or evict anyone they choose. Only at the very top of this stack, standing on the shoulders of the foundries, the chip designers, and the cloud providers, do we find the fourth layer, the foundational models themselves. These are the large language models, the generative AI that captures the public imagination. This is where the magic trick happens, but the magicians are utterly dependent on the physical infrastructure beneath them. OpenAI's partnership with Microsoft isn't just a business deal, it is a feudal arrangement. Microsoft provides the computational power from its Azure cloud, and in return, it gets a massive stake in the technology. The model is the puppet, the stack is the hand that controls it. This four-layered structure, foundry, chip, cloud, model, is the sovereign stack, and it functions exactly like the oil cartel of the 20th century. It is the new OPEC. OPEC's power came from controlling a finite critical physical resource. The sovereign stack's power comes from controlling a finite critical physical resource, hyper-specialized computational capacity. They can restrict supply, dictate prices, and grant or deny access to entire nations. Governments around the world are waking up to the terrifying realization that their economic future, their national security, and their technological sovereignty are no longer in their own hands. They are customers, supplicants to a new cartel of corporate sovereigns who own the very ground upon which the future is being built. The new oil barons, following the trillion-dollar flow. The mythology of Silicon Valley is built on the story of the garage. Two friends with a brilliant idea, funded by a small check from a forward-thinking angel investor, changing the world from humble beginnings. This narrative is comforting. It reinforces a belief in meritocracy and innovation. It is also in the context of artificial intelligence, a complete and total fiction. Building a foundational AI model is not like building a new app or a website. The capital required is so immense, the resources so concentrated, that it makes the Manhattan Project or the Apollo program look like modest public works. We are not talking about millions of dollars. We are talking about billions, flowing in single funding rounds to build and train a single model. And that money is not coming from your average Sand Hill Road venture capitalist. To understand who is truly building this future, you must follow the money. And when you do, you find the trail leads back to a new class of global power brokers, the new oil barons of the digital age. Their motivations have nothing to do with creating better consumer products. They are making a long-term investment in the acquisition of power. The first and most visible source of this capital is the tech giants themselves. Companies like Microsoft, Google, and Amazon are pouring the profits from their existing monopolies in operating systems, search, and e-commerce directly into the construction of the sovereign stack. Microsoft's $10 billion investment in OpenAI is a prime example. This wasn't a simple bet on a promising startup. It was a strategic move to ensure that the next paradigm of computing would run on their Azure cloud infrastructure. They are using the profits from the last war to fund the weapons for the next one. This is a closed loop of capital, a self-perpetuating engine of power, where the winners of the internet era are ensuring they become the absolute sovereigns of the AI era. But their money alone is not enough. The scale is too vast. This is where the second, more opaque source of capital comes in: sovereign wealth funds. These are colossal pools of state-owned capital, trillions of dollars controlled by governments, often from countries whose wealth is derived from physical resources like oil. Think of the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia or the Mubadala Investment Company of the United Arab Emirates. For decades, their purpose was to diversify their national economies away from oil. Now, they have a new, more urgent mandate: to convert their fading 20th century power, derived from fossil fuels, into durable 21st century power, derived from computational control. When a fund like this invests billions into an AI chip company or a foundational model lab, they are not looking for a simple financial return. They are purchasing geopolitical relevance. They understand that in a world run by AI, the nations that control the algorithms will have more influence than the nations that control the oil fields. They are buying a seat at the table of global governance for the next 100 years. This is a state-level acquisition of strategic infrastructure, disguised as a venture capital investment. It ensures that the control of this technology is not solely in American hands, creating a new multipolar world where power is measured in petaflops and parameters. The third stream of capital is the most secretive of all. It flows from the nexus between private equity, venture capital, and the national security state. For a public model of this, one can look at a firm like In-Q-Tel, the CIA's not-for-profit venture capital arm. Its stated mission is to identify and invest in companies developing cutting-edge technologies that serve United States national security interests. It was an early investor in companies that became titans, like Palantir Technologies. This model, of using quasi-private funds to direct innovation towards state objectives, is now being replicated globally, often in far less transparent ways. Secretive funds, with deep connections to intelligence agencies and defense ministries, are quietly seeding the AI ecosystem. They are not just picking winners. They are shaping the very direction of the technology to serve strategic ends: surveillance, cyber warfare, autonomous weapons, and social control. So when you see a headline about a new AI startup raising a billion-dollar funding round, the critical question is not what will they build, but cui bono, who benefits? The answer reveals the true return on investment they are all expecting. This is not about a 10% annual return or a successful IPO. The real ROI is the ownership of the control system for the 21st century. Think of it this way: investing in AI is not like investing in a company that makes cars. It is like being the sole financial backer for the invention of the internal combustion engine, the highway system, the gas stations, and the traffic laws all at once. The return isn't the profit from selling one car. The return is a percentage of every transaction that happens across that entire ecosystem forever. The investors in the sovereign stack are not betting on a product. They are betting on the chance to own the operating system of society itself. The ROI they are calculating is the ability to predict and influence consumer behavior on a global scale. It is the power to automate labor and capture the resulting economic gains. It is the military advantage that comes from autonomous drones and AI-driven intelligence analysis. Ultimately, it is the capacity to shape public opinion, to define reality for entire populations, and to manage human beings with the same efficiency as a logistics network. This is the prize. And for that kind of power, a few $1 trillion is considered a bargain. The illusion of open source, a kingdom of vassals. Whenever a new technology emerges that concentrates power, a counter-narrative inevitably appears. It's a story of hope, of decentralization, of the heroic upstart who will use the master's tools to dismantle the master's house. In the age of AI, this narrative has a name: open source. The term itself is loaded with positive connotations from the history of software, evoking a world of collaborative, transparent, and democratic development. The argument is simple. If companies like Meta release their powerful models like Llama for free, then anyone can build on them. Power will be distributed, innovation will flourish, and the grip of the sovereign stack will be broken. This is a dangerously naive and fundamentally flawed understanding of where power actually resides in this new paradigm. Open source AI is not a revolution. It is a managed insurgency, a strategy that ultimately reinforces the dominance of the very powers it claims to challenge. To understand why, we need to distinguish between having the blueprint for a car and owning the factory that can build it. An open-source model is like a blueprint. It's the set of architectural plans and, crucially, the pre-trained weights, the billions of parameters that represent the model's learned knowledge. Releasing this is a significant gesture, but it's only one piece of the puzzle. The problem is that the blueprint is for a machine of almost unimaginable complexity. You cannot run it on your laptop. You cannot even run it on a powerful server in your office. To operate a state-of-the-art large language model at any meaningful scale requires access to the same colossal computational infrastructure that the giants use. It requires a fleet of high-end GPUs, the kind made by NVIDIA and hosted by Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. This creates the first layer of dependency. A small company or a university lab can download an open-source model for free. But to do anything useful with it, to fine-tune it on their own data, to adapt it for a specific purpose, to run it as a service for customers, they must go, cap in hand, to one of the cloud landlords and rent the necessary computational power. The cost of this is astronomical. The free model immediately puts them on a pay-as-you-go plan with the very entities that control the sovereign stack. They are not competitors. They are customers. They are not revolutionaries. They are tenants in a feudal system, paying tribute to the lords who own the land. This dynamic creates a kingdom of vassals. The lords of the stack, by selectively releasing certain models as open source, can cultivate a vibrant ecosystem of smaller companies that are entirely dependent on their infrastructure. These smaller players do the hard work of finding new, innovative applications for the technology. They tailor the models for specific industries: law, medicine, finance. They build the consumer-facing apps. And in doing so, they expand the market for the core product, which is computational power. It's a brilliant strategy. The vassals take all the risks of building a new business, while the Lord simply collects the rent, their dominance growing with every new competitor that signs up for their cloud services. Furthermore, the term open source itself is being subtly redefined. In traditional software, it meant you had access to the source code, the training data, and the methods used to create it. In the new world of AI, it often means something much less. A company might release the model's weights but keep the vast, proprietary dataset it was trained on a secret. They might release the model but not the complex code and techniques used for alignment and safety tuning. This is not openness. It is a strategic release of a finished product, not the recipe to make your own. You are given the engine, but you are not told how it was built or what fuel it requires. This ensures that only the original creators, with their unique access to the data and training infrastructure, can produce the next generation of truly powerful models. The vassals are perpetually working with yesterday's technology, ensuring the lords always maintain their lead. Think of the strategic calculus from the perspective of a company like Meta. They are behind Amazon and Microsoft in the cloud computing race. By open sourcing their Llama models, they are not simply being altruistic. They are launching a strategic attack. They are commoditizing the model layer of the sovereign stack. Their goal is to make the AI models themselves less of a differentiator, thereby shifting the battleground to the other layers of the stack where they might have an advantage, or at least disrupt their rivals' dominance. They are encouraging thousands of developers to build applications using their free model, but where will those developers host those applications? On Oz, on Azure, on Google Cloud. Meta's move forces the cloud providers to spend more to support a wider variety of models, while simultaneously creating a generation of developers familiar with Meta's architecture. It is a brilliant piece of game theory that has nothing to do with democratizing power and everything to do with a war between titans, a war in which the smaller players are merely pawns. The illusion of open source is that it creates choice. The reality is that it consolidates power at the physical, infrastructural level. It distracts from the fundamental truth that as long as the fabrication of chips and the ownership of data centers are hypercentralized, the system remains a feudal one. Giving a peasant a sword does not make him a threat to a king who lives in an impregnable fortress. In the same way, giving a developer an open-source model does not make them a threat to a corporation that owns the global network of computational factories. It simply makes them a more productive and more profitable subject. The state as the first customer, too critical to regulate. A private monopoly, no matter how powerful, always has a theoretical check on its power: the state. In principle, governments can regulate, break up, or nationalize any corporation that becomes too dominant. This is the foundational assumption of a regulated capitalist economy. But what happens when that line blurs? What happens when the corporation and the state become so deeply intertwined that their interests are indistinguishable? This is the final and most crucial step in cementing the power of the sovereign stack. The state is not becoming its regulator. It is becoming its primary customer, its biggest advocate, and its ultimate guarantor. This is not a new phenomenon, but the speed and scale of its modern incarnation are unprecedented. The old military-industrial complex, a term coined by President Eisenhower to warn of the fusion of arms manufacturers and the Pentagon, looks quaint by comparison. Today, a new, far more powerful alliance is being forged: the intelligence-technological complex. The core of this alliance is a simple transaction. The companies of the sovereign stack provide the tools for state surveillance, control, and warfare. In return, the state provides them with massive contracts, legal protection, and a political moat that makes any meaningful regulation impossible. The canary in the coal mine for this new relationship was Project Maven, Launched by the Department of Defense in 2017, its goal was to use machine learning to analyze the vast quantities of drone surveillance footage being collected overseas. The Pentagon did not have the in-house expertise to build this system, so it turned to Silicon Valley. Google was a key partner, until employee protests forced the company to publicly withdraw. But the project didn't stop. It simply continued with other, less public-facing contractors. Maven was a proof of concept, demonstrating that the core competencies of the tech giants, data analysis, pattern recognition, machine learning, were now critical military capabilities. From that point forward, the floodgates opened. Today, companies like Amazon and Microsoft are not just cloud providers. They are defense contractors with the highest levels of security clearance. They are competing for massive, multi-billion-dollar contracts like the Pentagon's Joint Warfighting Cloud Capability, or JWCC, which aims to bring AI-powered data analysis to the entire military, from the back office to the battlefield. Palantir, a company whose entire business model is built on selling AI-driven data integration platforms to intelligence agencies like the CIA and law enforcement, has become a central player in the national security apparatus. This integration goes far beyond the military. Domestically, police departments are adopting predictive policing algorithms, often developed by these same companies, to forecast crime hotspots and identify potential offenders. Intelligence agencies are using AI to sift through global communications, identifying threats and patterns invisible to human analysts. Border agencies use it for facial recognition and risk assessment. The state is systematically outsourcing its core functions of surveillance and control to a handful of private companies. This creates a dangerous feedback loop. As these AI systems become more deeply embedded in the day-to-day operations of national security, they cease to be just another tool. They become critical infrastructure. The state becomes dependent on them. The prospect of unplugging from a particular company's cloud service is no longer a commercial decision. It's a national security crisis. How can a government effectively regulate a company whose algorithms are responsible for identifying terrorist threats or managing the logistics of its armed forces? The company is no longer just a vendor. It is a strategic partner, a trusted insider. This dependency is the ultimate defense against antitrust action or restrictive regulation. The argument, deployed behind closed doors in Washington, Brussels, and Beijing, is simple and persuasive. If you break us up or restrain our development, you will be handing a strategic advantage to our geopolitical rivals. National security requires that we remain dominant. The AI arms race becomes the perfect justification for unchecked monopolistic power. The corporation wraps itself in the flag, and any attempt to limit its power is portrayed as unpatriotic or strategically naive. The state, in turn, becomes the guarantor of the pyramid's power. It uses public funds, your tax dollars, to award the massive contracts that fuel the growth of the sovereign stack. It provides the legal frameworks, like liability shields and intellectual property laws, that protect the companies from competition and accountability. And it uses its diplomatic and military power to secure the physical supply chains, the access to rare earth minerals for chips, the security of undersea cables, the political stability of Taiwan, that the entire system depends on. The result is a hybrid entity, a fusion of corporate and state power that operates beyond the traditional checks and balances. It has the global reach and agility of a multinational corporation, combined with the legal authority and coercive power of a nation-state. This is the true nature of the cage being built. It is not a purely corporate cage, nor a purely governmental one. It is a public-private partnership in the business of population management. And once a technology is deemed too critical to fail, it also becomes too critical to regulate. The state, which was supposed to be the referee, has become the star player on the home team, ensuring the game is permanently rigged in their favor. Engineering the consumer. You are the raw material. We have spent our time at the apex of the pyramid, mapping the flows of capital and power between corporations and states. Now, we must turn to its base. This is the largest and most important part of the structure, the foundation upon which the entire edifice rests. This is the layer occupied by billions of ordinary people, interacting with AI every day through their phones, computers, and smart devices. And it is here that the system's true purpose is revealed, through the inversion of a single, fundamental concept: the relationship between the customer and the product. In a traditional economy, you are the customer. A company makes a product, a car, a coffee maker, a piece of software, and you pay them for it. The transaction is clear. In the economy of the sovereign stack, this relationship is turned inside out. If the service is free, then you are not the customer. You are the product. This was the core insight of surveillance capitalism in the age of social media, but AI takes it to a far more profound and intimate level. You are not just the product being sold to advertisers. You are the raw material being fed into the machine, and the finished product is a more predictable, more manageable, and more profitable version of you. Every interaction you have with an AI system is a data extraction event. When you ask a chatbot a question, you are not just receiving an answer. You are providing the model with a valuable data point about your curiosities, your knowledge gaps, your biases, and your emotional state. When you use an AI image generator, you are training the system on the aesthetics of human desire. Every song you listen to on a recommendation engine, every route you take using a navigation app, every item you purchase based on a personalized ad, all of it is a continuous stream of behavioral data, flowing from the base of the pyramid up to the apex. This is the digital exhaust of modern life, and it is the most valuable resource on the planet. It is the new oil, and we are the endlessly gushing wells. This data is used for two primary purposes. The first is simply to improve the models. Your conversations, your creations, and your choices are the grist for the mill, the training data that makes the AI more capable, more accurate, and more persuasive. We are, in effect, performing a constant, unpaid, global-scale job of data labeling and model refinement. We are the ghost in the machine, the human feedback loop that allows the system to learn and grow. But the second purpose is far more significant. The goal is not just to understand you. The goal is to change you. The ultimate product of this entire multi-trillion-dollar apparatus is not a clever chatbot or a pretty picture. The product is behavioral modification at scale. The AI systems are not passive tools waiting for your command. They are active agents, designed to subtly nudge, guide, and shape your decisions in ways that benefit the owners of the stack. Consider the recommendation engine. Its stated purpose is to help you discover new things you might like. Its real purpose is to make your taste more predictable. By analyzing the patterns in your past choices, it steers you towards content that fits a profitable model, creating feedback loops that can shape the cultural mainstream. It doesn't just find what you like, it tells you what to like. Over time, it can cultivate entire ecosystems of taste, driving demand for certain products, artists, or ideas, while marginalizing others. Think of dynamic pricing algorithms. They don't just set a price based on supply and demand. They set a price based on a personalized prediction of your willingness to pay at a specific moment in time. They know your income level from your browsing history, your urgency from your search queries, and your emotional state from your social media activity. The price is not a reflection of the product's value. It is a precisely calibrated psychological tool designed to extract the maximum possible revenue from you. Now extend this logic to every facet of life. An AI-driven news feed doesn't just show you the news. It shows you a version of reality calculated to maximize your engagement, often by triggering outrage or confirming your biases, making you more polarized and easier to influence. An AI-powered hiring tool doesn't just screen candidates. It selects for traits that correlate with compliance and profitability, subtly engineering the workforce of the future. This is the true function of the AI at the base of the pyramid. It is a system for managing the human inventory. Its purpose is to reduce the messy, unpredictable, and often irrational nature of human behavior into a set of predictable, optimizable patterns. It is a system designed to eliminate uncertainty. An uncertain consumer is a risk. A predictable consumer is an asset. The goal is to transform you from the former into the latter. In this model of the world, your free will is not a right to be protected. It is a variable to be controlled. Your personal desires are not a reflection of your identity. They are a surface to be mined for data. Your beliefs are not a product of your reason. They are a target for persuasive optimization. We are told that these systems are being built to serve us, but the truth is, we are being re-engineered to serve the system. We are the raw material, refined and processed into a more perfect commodity, a human being whose next move can be predicted, monetized, and controlled. The fragility of the glass pyramid. From a distance, the pyramid of control we have described appears monolithic, unbreakable. It is a structure built of capital, silicon, and state power designed to last for a century. But upon closer inspection, it is revealed to be a glass pyramid, possessing a terrifying hidden fragility. A system so complex and so tightly integrated is also a system uniquely vulnerable to catastrophic failure. Its strength, its centralization, is also its greatest weakness. The architects of this system have created a single point of failure for civilization, and there are cracks already forming in the glass. The first and most obvious point of fragility is geopolitical. As we established, the entire sovereign stack is built upon the silicon manufactured in a handful of foundries, the most advanced of which are located in Taiwan. This is not just a supply chain issue. It is the central geopolitical fact of the 21st century. The fate of the global economy, the future of technological progress, and the balance of military power all depend on the political status of an island of 23 million people. A naval blockade, a political crisis, or an outright invasion of Taiwan would not just disrupt the supply of semiconductors. It would instantly halt the engine of the AI revolution. Data centers would become billion-dollar paperweights, unable to acquire the next generation of chips needed for expansion and repair. The entire upward trajectory of AI development would freeze, potentially for years. Never before in human history has so much power been balanced on such a fine and precarious geographic knife edge. The second crack in the pyramid is environmental and infrastructural. The voracious appetite of AI for energy and water is not a temporary problem to be solved by future efficiencies. It is a fundamental, structural constraint. As models become larger and more powerful, their energy consumption grows exponentially. Global technology infrastructure already consumes nearly 10% of the world's electricity, and AI is driving that number up at a staggering rate. This puts immense strain on aging power grids, leading to blackouts and energy shortages. The competition for water between data centers and local communities is already creating political conflict in the American Southwest and other arid regions. This is an unsustainable model. The glass pyramid is being built on a foundation of finite resources, and it is consuming them at a rate that threatens the very stability of the environment it depends on. At some point, The physical world will present a bill that the digital world cannot pay. But the most insidious fragility is not in the physical world, but in the models themselves. We think of these AI systems as dispassionate, logical machines, but they are products of their data, and data can be poisoned. The concept of data poisoning, or a poison model, is one of the most serious and least understood threats in the AI landscape. Because foundational models are trained on vast swathes of the internet, they are vulnerable to subtle manipulation by a determined adversary. Imagine a state actor or a sophisticated non-state group that wants to subtly corrupt a major foundational model. They don't need to launch a frontal cyber attack on the data center. Instead, they can spend months or years slowly and methodically seeding the internet. Forums like Reddit, collaborative websites like Wikipedia, scientific preprint archives, with carefully crafted, slightly inaccurate or biased information. This poison is then scraped up and ingested during the model's next training run. The corruption would be almost impossible to detect. The model would still function correctly 99.9% of the time, but on certain specific topics, or in response to certain subtle prompts, it would produce a flawed, biased, or dangerously incorrect output. Now, consider the consequences. As a society, we are rapidly moving to integrate these models into every critical system. Imagine a poisoned medical AI that subtly misdiagnoses a rare but treatable form of cancer. Imagine a poisoned financial AI that, under specific market conditions, recommends a catastrophic series of trades, triggering a market crash. Imagine a poisoned military AI that misidentifies a civilian airliner as a hostile missile, leading to an irreversible escalation. This is not science fiction. It is a recognized vulnerability that security researchers are deeply concerned about. The very thing that makes these models so powerful, their ability to learn from the world, also makes them susceptible to its deceptions. And as more and more of our economy and society are run by a small number of these foundational models, the risk of a single poisoned model causing a cascading failure across the entire system becomes terrifyingly real. One compromised model, used by millions of businesses and government agencies, could become a single point of failure for the global economy. These fragilities, the geopolitical choke point, the environmental unsustainability, and the potential for model poisoning, reveal the profound arrogance at the heart of this project. The architects of the sovereign stack are building a perfectly optimized, globally integrated system of control. But in their pursuit of efficiency and power, they have eliminated redundancy, diversity, and resilience. They have built a beautiful, intricate, and impossibly complex pyramid of glass, forgetting that a single, well-aimed stone can shatter the entire structure. The question is not whether the pyramid will fall, but when, and what will be left in the rubble when it does. The end of spontaneity, life in the predictive machine. We have analyzed the architecture of the cage, the flow of money that funds it, and the cracks in its foundation. But we have yet to ask the most important question: what does it feel like to live inside it? Beyond the geopolitics and the economics, what are the social, psychological, and spiritual consequences of inhabiting a world managed by a predictive machine? The greatest cost of this system is not measured in dollars or data points, but in the erosion of the very qualities that define the human experience: agency, serendipity, and the freedom to be unpredictable. The primary function of the algorithmic society is to optimize. It seeks to create a frictionless existence, to remove uncertainty and inefficiency from every aspect of our lives. Your route to work is optimized to avoid traffic. Your diet is optimized for your health goals. Your entertainment is optimized for your taste profile. Your potential romantic partners are optimized for compatibility. On the surface, This sounds like a utopia of convenience. But a world without friction is also a world without discovery. A world without uncertainty is a world without adventure. Consider the concept of serendipity, the fortunate accident, the unexpected discovery. It is the bookstore you stumble into on a whim, where you find the book that changes your life. It is the wrong turn you take that leads you to a stunning, unknown view. It is the random conversation with a stranger that sparks a new idea or a lifelong friendship. These moments are the bedrock of a rich and meaningful life. They are fundamentally inefficient and unpredictable. And for that reason, they are the enemy of the predictive machine. In a world managed by AI, the path of least resistance is always the one that is algorithmically recommended. The system learns your preferences and then feeds you a perfectly curated stream of content, products, and experiences that match those preferences. It creates a comfortable, personalized reality bubble for you to live in. But in doing so, it systematically closes the door on the unknown. It eliminates the possibility of the happy accident. You will never stumble upon the book you didn't know you needed, because the algorithm has already decided it doesn't fit your profile. You will never hear the song that challenges your taste, because it has been filtered out. Life becomes a closed loop, a hall of mirrors where you only ever encounter optimized reflections of your past self. The result is a slow and silent death of spontaneity, a gradual narrowing of the human spirit. This erosion of experience leads to a deeper erosion of self. The concept of free will is predicated on the ability to make choices, including poor ones. It is the freedom to act against your own perceived best interest, to be irrational, to change your mind for no good reason. It is in these moments of unpredictable choice that we forge our identity. The predictive machine, however, views this irrationality as an error in the system, a bug to be fixed. Its goal is to understand your decision-making process so well that it can predict your choice before you make it. And once it can predict your choice, it can influence it. The nudge is the primary tool of this new form of governance. Through subtle changes in the choice architecture, the way options are presented to you, the system can steer you towards a desired outcome without you ever feeling coerced. The recommended option is highlighted. The unhealthy choice requires an extra click to confirm. The dissenting article is buried on the second page of search results. Each individual nudge is trivial, but a lifetime of being nudged in a particular direction is not freedom. It is a form of sophisticated, almost invisible conditioning. We may still feel like we are in the driver's seat, but the AI is the GPS whispering directions at every turn, slowly and surely guiding us to a destination chosen by someone else. The final stage of this process is the creation of a pre-crime society. As the predictive models become more accurate, they will move from predicting your consumer choices to predicting your social and political behavior. An algorithm will assess your risk of defaulting on a loan, of committing a crime, of developing a medical condition, or of holding dissenting political views. Your risk score will become a new form of digital caste, determining your access to credit, insurance, employment, and even your freedom of movement. In this world, deviation from the optimized norm is no longer just a personal choice. It is a statistical liability. The person who reads strange combinations of books, who travels to unusual places, who associates with a diverse and unpredictable group of people, will be flagged by the system as an anomaly. They may not have broken any laws, but their behavior is not legible to the machine. They are a source of uncertainty, and the system is designed to eliminate uncertainty. They will be subtly penalized. Their insurance premiums will rise, their loan applications will be denied, they will be subjected to extra screening at the airport. This is the ultimate outcome of a perfectly managed society. It is a world that is safe, efficient, predictable, and sterile. It is a world that has traded the messy, chaotic, and beautiful reality of human existence for the cold, clean logic of the machine. There is no room for the rebel, the artist, the eccentric, or the saint. There is only room for the optimized user. The cage, in its final form, is not made of iron bars, but of invisible, algorithmic walls, a prison of perfect comfort and convenience from which we may never even want to escape. The Sovereignty Project, Finding the Exit. Having mapped the architecture of control, it is easy to fall into a state of despair. The system appears total, its logic inescapable. Faced with this reality, the most common proposed solutions are almost comically inadequate. They fall into two categories: individual withdrawal and state regulation. Both are destined to fail because they fundamentally misdiagnose the nature of the problem. The first proposed solution is a fantasy of individual purity, the idea that one can simply unplug. This is a romantic but ultimately hollow gesture. In a world where access to employment, finance, healthcare, and social connection is increasingly mediated by digital platforms, unplugging is not an act of rebellion. It is an act of self-imposed exile. It is a form of surrender, not resistance. The system is not an opt-in service. It is the operating system of modern life. You cannot refuse to participate without also refusing to participate in society itself. The cage is designed to be coextensive with the world. There is no outside to escape to. The second proposed solution, state regulation, is more serious but equally flawed. As we have seen, the state is not a neutral arbiter. It is a primary customer and partner in the construction of the sovereign stack. While there will be endless debates about AI safety and ethical guidelines, these are largely performative. They are designed to manage public anxiety, not to fundamentally alter the distribution of power. Any regulation that genuinely threatens the strategic dominance or profitability of the national champions of the AI race will be deemed a threat to national security and quietly suffocated. The state will regulate the edges, trimming the hedges of the garden, but it will never uproot the trees, because it is enjoying the fruit too much. If these paths lead nowhere, where is the exit? The answer is not to unplug or to regulate, but to begin the long, difficult work of building an alternative. It is to pose a question that the current paradigm makes unthinkable. What does sovereignty look like in the age of artificial intelligence? This is not a technical question. It is the central political question of our time, and it must be answered on three distinct levels: the individual, the communal, and the national. Individual sovereignty begins with a declaration of a new kind of right, the right to an unoptimized life. This is the right to be inefficient, to be unpredictable, and to be unprofitable. It is the right to make choices that do not conform to the recommendations of an algorithm. In practical terms, this requires developing a new kind of literacy. We must learn to recognize the nudge, to identify the subtle ways in which choice architecture is designed to manipulate us. It means actively seeking out the inefficient, the serendipitous, the unrecommended. It means cultivating human-only spaces, moments and interactions that are deliberately shielded from the machine. It means treating our own attention and our own data not as a resource to be casually given away, but as the most precious assets we possess. Communal sovereignty moves beyond the individual. It recognizes that true autonomy is impossible in isolation. This is about building and supporting technologies and platforms that are deliberately designed to be outside the sovereign stack. It means supporting decentralized, user-owned social networks, data unions that allow communities to collectively bargain over the use of their data, and local, small-scale computational infrastructure. It is the digital equivalent of the local food movement. Instead of relying on a global, centralized supply chain for our information and our social connections, we must begin to cultivate our own. These alternatives will likely be less convenient and less powerful than the offerings of the giants, but they will be ours. That is the crucial difference. Finally, there is the question of national sovereignty. For a nation-state to be truly sovereign in the 21st century, it cannot be a mere tenant on the cloud of another country or corporation. It must possess some measure of computational independence. This is why we are beginning to see the rise of sovereign AI initiatives around the world. Nations are realizing that they must invest in their own data centers, their own chip designs, and their own foundational models, even if they are smaller and less advanced than the state of the art. This is not just about economic competition. It is a declaration of independence. It is a recognition that the logic of the sovereign stack, if left unchallenged, leads to a new form of digital colonialism, where a few corporate empires, backed by a single superpower, effectively govern the internal affairs of the rest of the world. This is the sovereignty project. It is not a simple solution or a quick fix. It is a multi-generational struggle to redefine the terms of our relationship with technology, and through it, our relationship with power itself. It requires us to stop thinking of ourselves as users or consumers, and to start thinking of ourselves as citizens of a new and contested digital world. The architects of the cage are offering us a future of perfect, predictable, and profitable comfort. The only thing they ask for in return is our autonomy. The first step towards the exit is to recognize that this is a price that is too high to pay.